Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, where we talk with key spokespeople in the logistics industry about topical issues. Hosted by Peter Macleod, editor of Logistics Business magazine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to the latest Logistics Business Conversations podcast, which goes under the headline today of How AI is Revolutionising Transport and Logistics. AI is an exciting technology that's the potential to affect every aspect of our lives. Businesses have been quick to tap into its capabilities, none more so than those which handle vast amounts of data, such as transport and logistics. Joining me today are two experts from commercial software specialist Aptean, whose Paragon solution is generally considered the de facto advanced routing and scheduling software. I'm delighted to introduce to you Martin Parker, Head of R&D at Paragon from Aptean. Hello, Martin, and welcome to this edition of Logistics Business Conversations.
Thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate that.
Alongside Martin is Manog Tseung, Head of Product Management at Paragon from Aptean. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the podcast, Manog.
Thanks, Peter. It's great to be here.
So let's get straight into it with you, Martin. In the context of transport and logistics, can you tell us how AI is already being used today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, talking generally, I think AI is used in a lot of different ways. Some are more obvious than others. I mean, in our solution space as software developers, we use AI in transport planning. So in order to create a more detailed, accurate plan, and then also for real-time adjustments sort of on the day of execution of that plan as well. If you look at out on the road, sat-nav, that's essentially AI. That's been around a long, long time. Now we start to see a lot more on the road in terms of like variable speed limit control and that sort of stuff as well, which is there to improve traffic flow. So AI's around and doing a lot of stuff for us already, really.
We've titled this conversation today, How AI is Revolutionising Transport and Logistics. So it sounds like from what you're saying, Martin, revolutionising is probably a bit strong because, you know, it's an evolution. I'm going to throw over to you, Manog. What are the opportunities that AI can bring to transport and logistics companies, and what's the sort of way that we can best exploit them?
Okay, so really AI, you get a lot of tech heads having lots of different ways of trying to use AI. You can see lots of different ways it's being introduced today, either visually or behind the scenes. But the bottom line is for a business, though, it really boils down to, especially a transport business, is reducing cost. Yeah. So reducing cost, improving efficiency, and reducing the amount of time that people spend. Because at the end of the day, transport for many operations, you hear about things like free delivery, free services, that it could be used as a loss leader. So really the best thing they can do is to use AI to start to improve the efficiencies and cut down that the bottom line for the business. And really use the technology behind the scenes to reduce that bottom line.
So I immediately think of mapping technologies as an example that I can relate to of AI in my everyday life. So you talked about bringing cost savings and efficiencies to businesses. Perhaps Martin, you can explain a little bit how it would work in the commercial sense then.
In terms of what we do, so we've used AI for a lot of years in terms of our routing and scheduling algorithms, but what we look to do is constantly evolve because AI has come on an incredible amount over the years, and I think we're only just scratching the surface, really. You said about it being revolutionary earlier on, and indeed it is, and it will continue to be so. So what we're doing in our latest incarnations of work is leveraging some of the sort of newer ways of utilising AI, in particular machine learning, to improve what we've already got today and learn from the results we're getting out on the road from customers as well.
So Martin, then we talk about transport and logistics as a loss leader. How can a business actually improve its bottom line by embracing AI?
So if you can use AI to solve a problem, that would otherwise, say, take a human an impossibly long time to achieve, then ultimately, if you end up with better plans and better execution of your deliveries on a given day, then you're going to make savings across. That might be just savings in fuel and mileage, or in some cases, you might actually be able to save, full vehicles in terms of delivering a given workload on a particular day, but with less resources. So, they translate directly into cost reduction in terms of executing your deliveries.
And Manog, how can that be? How can that do the job better than a good old-fashioned transport manager, transport planner?
So quite simply, AI is just simply more capable of handling and juggling many, many more factors at once. Yeah, and it's the other thing about AI is relentless. Yeah, so typically we might think of, a planner might think in terms of time windows, products, weights, road restrictions, rush hour. When you're trying to plan a listed logistics routes, for example, but each of those factors already complicating the decision by a magnitude by itself. But AI is going to be able to consider all of those things and more. So so you're talking about things like, especially as you move towards sustainable vehicles like EVs, you can start to think about things like terrain, whether it's going up hills or going down hills, the amount of weight it's hauling at each stop in between stops, whether the weather conditions are affecting it, and draw on real-time information as well, like weather conditions, traffic conditions, even things like charging point availability, which is a real problem when you're planning things. Most of us know, for example, when you get to a charging station, it's potluck how big the queue is, for example, or even if the charging stations are actually working. So now in today's connected world, all that information can be drawn upon also within by the AI systems. And again, like I said right at the start of my sort of monologue here, AI is just capable of juggling all those factors at the same time. If you take a typical planner, they'll typically focus on one or two of those things at the same time, but AI really can really start to optimize and squeeze that efficiency into the route plan.
Right. So it's drawing on multiple data sources and I presume learning from every decision that's made and every piece of information it receives. We're talking about machine learning here, Martin?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of we're feeding the actual information back into the plan, which helps. Yeah, in terms of machine learning, where we use it, that is more looking at the efficiency of our routing algorithms and learning from what actually created a good plan, and therefore taking those data points and making sure that next time it actually uses the best combination of things to derive the best plan every time it runs, based on the conditions of all the inputs.
So I'll stay with you, Martin, for this next point that I want to bring up. It seems that a reduced carbon footprint is a happy byproduct of an efficient trucking operation. So what are the areas in which lorries can travel at a more efficient rate thanks to AI?
Okay, so in that space, what we're really looking at is the sort of known road speeds on a road network. So we will look at all that data in advance, and we will use that to calculate what the best routes are based on what's going to be most efficient for that vehicle, which translates really to those vehicles spending less time sat in jams, more time sort of traveling at a consistent speed, and therefore using less fuel, which, as you say, is just great from a carbon footprint perspective.
So, Manog, what Martin's saying sounds like, by optimizing a fleet, there's perhaps the potential there to take some of those vehicles off the road, perhaps during the software, the intelligence of it will have the ability to predict when you're likely to need more vehicles and fewer vehicles. Is that something that we can rely on it for now or in the future?
I think absolutely. I think in multiple ways, in fact, so like Martin said, if you're increasing the drops per vehicle, then you can actually reduce the number of vehicles you actually need on a daily basis. And obviously that translates for large fleets, for example, on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, massive savings. From our experience, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds or even millions of dollars, basically for large operations. But the other aspect of that as well is also forecast and capacity planning. So, One of the worst things you want as a transport manager is to have too few vehicles for what you need to achieve, or too many vehicles sitting around doing nothing. So really, AI has the ability to help you also with forward and forecast planning, so you can start to understand the kind of volumes that you'll be receiving and look ahead. And in some ways, again, just taking even further, is if you can bring that visibility of your network into this connected world, and you have visibility to forecast of what's available in your supply chain, you can actually bring those decisions right to the front when you're actually planning or committing things like deliveries or schedules, and start to shape how those sort of plans are made as well. So it's all about trying to share that information and also make all that information available and bring it together.
So we're kind of throwing demand planning and transport, taking them out of their silos and integrating them as a single operation, effectively.
Absolutely, and AI is going to help us do that because by its very nature, it can pull information from many sources, assemble it, and start to help you visualize it, so that you can start making either decisions or let the AI itself start to make decisions and proposals as well.
So whereby sort of with demand planning, traditionally we would look sort of weeks or months in the future, and with transport planning we'd probably look at tomorrow or this week. We're talking about, for transport planning, taking a much sort of longer term view. So if it's a question of expanding or shrinking a fleet, for example, those sorts of decisions are made on seasonal bases, I presume, around things like peaks and troughs. Is that right, Martin?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And clearly a lot of businesses will do those sort of calculations maybe quarterly or every half year. So getting all those inputs and crunching those numbers really helps those savings.
So I sort of said that sustainability was a little bit of a, shall we say, a byproduct from an efficient transport network. Are there any other spin-offs that can be beneficial? For example, any benefits to customer service that AI can bring?
Yeah, absolutely. From a customer services perspective, I think what we see nowadays is much more improved planning, and as the plan gets better, your estimated time of arrival is improving all the time, and that's only ever a better benefit to the customer. It means that they're getting the product when they expect it, less disruptions to deal with on the day. So it sort of starts to self-fulfill in terms of ongoing improvement.
I think another aspect as well is as AI gets embedded into the solution, you start to become more reliable in terms of what service you can offer. Your planned versus actual, there's less discrepancy because the plans you come out with are much better, and your ability to sort of in real time understand what your fleet can do is improving, which means that ultimately that translates into a better promise, a service promise, more reliability, and really the ability to guarantee services up front rather than offer them and try and solve the problem later further down the line with your transport team.
So Manog, it seems like the sort of the overall benefit here is that your operations are more planned rather than reactionary. Is that a fair point?
I think definitely that's the case. The planning side of things is definitely going to improve, but also the execution side of things, because things will always go wrong in the real world. Things will happen that are outside your control. AI, though, again, with its ever open eyes, its relentless view of the world, especially in today's connected world, will be able to see things happening and potentially react to them a lot faster and a lot more reliable than having somebody, sitting in front of a screen or in front of a dashboard and sort of looking them and sort of responding as and when. You're starting to get a lot more automation to exceptions happening in the world as well. And that's going to basically improve your overall service, especially from a scalable perspective. As your solution grows, or as your fleet grows, as you get more vehicles on the road, that the problems and exceptions you have to deal with, they expand exponentially.
So Martin, forgive me, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I'm not going to ask you for numbers. You'll be glad to hear. So can you give us some sort of relatable examples of how a business can actually make cost savings? Perhaps we should have a little bit of a reset and just think what exactly will AI bring us in terms of cost savings?
I would say, certainly something I've learned over the last few years is what you've got to do is open your mind up and just look for the opportunities. So I was thinking about this a little bit before this cast, and essentially, if you look for the things in your business that you've either got problems with or you don't have time to solve because they are too complicated in any reasonable time frame, then they might be opportunities where AI could come in and actually solve that problem. Because what AI can do is make sense of the nonsensical, which is really, really useful. And I think it's a case of trust as well, just resonating with what some of the things Manog was saying there. So in terms of the actual execution and sort of reacting to that plan using AI, what we see is a bit of a trust issue at the moment, I think, in its utilization. So I know a lot of software companies will build in the ability where AI is going to help with those decisions, but you definitely want a human being there at the moment to go and ratify that before they sort of commit to, yes, we will make that change to the plan. And I think over time, the more trust will grow as the technology improves, and we'll actually get much more automation around that as well.
Right, so fewer and fewer human interventions along the way. I mean, it's such a cliche now, isn't it? And I use it all the time. Being a writer, AI is going to take my job. But I suppose the reality is actually, if you're a business and you don't embrace the opportunities that AI brings, your business is likely to be less competitive. So it won't just be you losing your job; it'll be your whole crew around you. Is that fair to say that, Manog? Would you say that businesses sitting on their hands when it comes to AI at the moment are likely to get left behind?
Absolutely, I think so. Definitely, you've got to embrace what's coming around the corner because everybody else is basically, and you have to take the opportunities with you. So, and it doesn't mean, from a product perspective, it doesn't mean you have to suddenly go and re-engineer everything you have. So, for example, from my perspective, there are at least two ways you can use AI when it comes to product. You can either try and re-engineer the product to weave AI into every decision that it makes itself, or you could potentially realize the fact that you already have some really good tools that can do the job. At the end of the day, you can then get AI to actually learn how to use those tools. So instead of rewriting your tools, you could actually, a quicker way potentially, or a stepping stone even, is to actually, use machine learning, get the AI to understand how the tools behave. If your tools have lots of switches and levers, the AI system can understand how those things react with each other, what effect they have on things like, in our example, for example, route planning or optimization. And the AI system can actually start to use historic data, for example, like Martin said, and start to understand how to use it. And that's very accessible even today. Yeah, you have lots of AI engine models that can actually learn with machine learning and actually start to help improve what you have already, rather than suddenly saying, right, oh my God, I've got to go and completely re-engineer all my products and start to have AI at its core. So there are different ways you can approach it.
Is it fair to say that we're always aiming for the perfect supply chain, but we'll never achieve it? But AI can help us reach a near perfect supply chain, Martin.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. At the end of the day, we're always striving for perfection and improvement.
And where do you think AI is likely to take us in the future of transport and logistics? What are the applications that it's likely to get used for, which we can't see it being used for currently, but may just be in the future?
If we're thinking really out there, I think we've got a long way to go with vehicle automation, unmanned vehicles. That technology is well underway from a technology perspective, but clearly there's a lot of barriers to entry at the moment.
So yes, it's not the AI that's holding that technology back. What would you say is holding that back?
There's a lot of things really. So there's a legal issue with it. I think in terms of liability, if there's an accident, who's to blame? I think if you look at some of the stuff that, say, Amazon have been doing in terms of drone trials for deliveries, then I could see some privacy concerns coming in there and hacking concerns. Can it be hacked? It can't be hacked. Can it be stolen? in terms of protecting it from stealing? Is it going to be taking photographic evidence and therefore capturing people's personal data and that sort of stuff? So lots of legislative things that get in the way.
Yes, it seems like there's some major hurdles to overcome before we see it as an everyday technology. So maybe, Manog, you can help bring us back to today. I don't know much about Paragon. Can you tell us a little bit how it operates in the real world and how AI is playing a part in optimizing it?
Yeah, so Paragon is all about taking, like I said before, multiple factors, things like time constraints, product details, customer locations, and things like fuel usage, vehicle types, and taking all those factors and trying to optimize the best routes using the least distance, the least number of vehicles, and the least cost to the business. And AI is going to really help us because our product is at the heart is a kind of strategic modeling tool as well. So AI is definitely going to be able to help by taking historic data, learning how actually the way the Paragon can be used can be improved. And then it's also going to help from a perspective of being able to take information on how plans are executed and feed that back into how the plans are created. So looking at plan versus actual, and start to collate and analyze and propose changes to the way the planning's done to improve it, as well as things like within the process as well. We're looking at things like using natural language, for example, to help Paragon planners generate scripts for actually automating jobs within the process. We're looking at AI to help us with the load building of pallets and vehicle loading, for example. And let alone, having an AI assistant sitting on your desktop beside you and actually helping you through the process and prompting you with lots of information available from all different sources. So really, it's across the board, really. I think AI is going to, again, we're not necessarily going to revolutionize, but it's going to strengthen and improve the planning process and make it a lot more accessible to a lot of businesses, whatever size they are.
And Martin, we're all challenged today with labour issues, whether that's pulling carrots out of the ground or packing boxes in a warehouse. But specifically, professional lorry drivers, they're very much in demand. So is by driving efficiencies through the supply chain, is that going to help alleviate this labour challenge that we have, would you say?
Yeah, it should certainly do. Yeah, absolutely. If we can make better plans, reduce vehicles on the road for a given workload, that can only help.
And from a driver's perspective, do they have much interface with Paragon? Are they a participant in the decision-making processes, or are they purely the tool through which the decisions are executed?
In terms of the product set within Paragon, drivers do actually use one of our components to get proof of delivery off customers. We engage the driver workforce quite a lot in terms of the usability of that software as well. So I know Manog himself has spent a lot of time in his role with drivers in driver meetings at very early hours in the morning before they set off, understanding how they're using the software, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, to make their jobs easier and more accurate and better. Don't know if you can add anything to that, Manog, based on your experiences.
So drivers will quite often also feed back into the plans themselves. So there's in our software, we have capability for drivers to be debriefed, so that actually the planners can learn a bit more about the kind of things that drivers do. They might have specific routes that they follow in preferences. And the whole thing about AI is through learning, it can start to assimilate all this stuff just purely from the data as well. It can start to spot trends and understand information and understand driver preferences and start to pull that data out of just purely the data, as opposed to just interviewing drivers, for example. So that's one of the things that we're looking at as well.
It's always interesting when I talk to people in the industry about the embracing technology. It always feels like the human being still plays the very, very central role in everything we do. Martin, can you envisage a time when there won't be human intervention, or do you think we'll always play a part?
Well, I think absolutely humans will always have to play a part in it, just to check it's doing what we expect it to do. But using a real example, if we've got deliveries out on the road and we've got a computer making a decision because a route's running late, which of the drops on that route should we take out so that we actually satisfy the estimated time of arrival for the majority of our customers. Absolutely, AI can probably work that out, but what we normally see is a human at the moment taking that information and either agreeing to apply it or not. So I think we'll see that change over time and the balance shift towards it being more automated without human touch. But you're always going to need humans there to check things are working as you expect them to work.
And so, Manog, as our conversation comes towards its conclusion, perhaps I can ask you just for a little bit of an overview. If a business is a little bit nervous about AI, a little bit anxious about taking its first steps, what would you say to that business owner to encourage them to trust the technology and to embrace it and to use it?
I'd say at the end of the day, it's not that scary. It's all in your control. Like you said, instead of letting AI make all the decisions, you can still use AI to actually give you information that you can act on. So, for example, part of the way, certainly from a product perspective, is to build AI in a way that helps users gain confidence in the way it behaves. And that as you, in any kind of product, you get feedback from your users as the decisions are made. They're either good or bad. The thing about AI is it learns. So the idea is that you should jump in at first. Yes, you might get some anomalous results from AI, but the whole point about AI is that you actually continually feedback and you learn it and you teach it how to behave and to produce the results you want. And ultimately, again, it's all in your control, and it can only really improve the business from that perspective. We've, the kind of pilots and sort of examples and experimentation that we've done has always led towards some quite impressive gains in productivity and efficiencies.
And Martin, to finish with you today, I just wondered whether it's you could sort of tell our listeners that actually the advantages are by far outweigh any fears or perceived disadvantages that the technology may have.
I'll be honest, I'll be struggling to quote the disadvantages, really, Peter. At the end of the day, I think people are nervous about AI sometimes because it's unknown and it's almost so clever that it's hard to get your head around. But I think once you embrace it and accept that it's here to stay, then it's a tool, as Manog says. It's a tool there to help. That's what it does. It helps you. It helps businesses. It moves things forward to be more efficient.
Well, amen to that, I would say. Unfortunately, the clock continues to tick on remorselessly, and we've reached the end of our allotted time. So it remains for me just to thank you both, Martin and Manog, for your very interesting contributions today. It's been, for me, enlightening and educational. Thank you also to Paragon from Aptean for supporting this edition of Logistics Business Conversations. And also thanks to you, the listener, for joining us today, of course. Wherever you get your podcasts from, please do subscribe to Logistics Business Conversations just to make sure that the next edition is delivered straight to you as soon as it's released. Until then, it's goodbye from Martin.
Goodbye and thank you.
And it's goodbye from Manog.
Goodbye. Thanks you, Peter.
And it's goodbye from me, Peter Macleod. Goodbye.